Hi, my name is Mara. I'm the president of Sutherland Wells.
And I'm Rob. I'm the vice president of Sutherland Wells.
And today we're going to show you how to work with our Murdoch line, and we're going to start with our hard sealer. So our Murdoch line is our polymerized tung oil resin hybrid. It contains our polymerized tung oil, our citrus-based solvent, and some of our odorless mineral spirits, and it contains our uralkyd resin, which is a clear, non-yellowing, non-plasticky looking resin. So when you work with the Murdoch line, you're getting the look of a tung oil with the durability of a resin. So it's a really beautiful finish. It's very versatile. It's very durable. And it's also easy to use. And Rob is going to show you how to do this. Hard sealer is always the first step with the Murdoch line. So whether your top coats are U500 or hard oil or hard sealer, you always want to do your first 2 coats with our hard sealer, because the hard sealer contains the oil, which penetrates into the wood, has a little bit of resin in it, and allows the top coats, which have more resin in it, to stick really well, to adhere really well, which gives you the benefit of using the Murdoch system, which is once you apply this, like all of our finishes, you never have to sand it back down to the bare wood to recoat it.
That's right.
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 Do you have something to
honestly,
add?
well, the Murdoch's, the hard sealer in particular, was the first line that I fell in love with Sutherland Wells. It was sort of the magic finish that we were kind of looking for in building restoration work, where we were using it as a bridge coat. So you had something that's previous and that's bonding to the wood, and you wanted to sort of rejuvenate or put a fresh coat of
Like
protectant
over
on top.
polyurethane.
Over polyurethane
Yep.
floors, over shellac on your trim, over lacquer on things. So it'll bond to all those surfaces, properly prepped and scuffed, but the hard sealer is like the magic finish. And the beauty of the hard sealer is it can be its own finish too. It doesn't necessarily need to be top coated with anything but itself. The U500 is the most protective line, which is our floor finishes, and this is the sort of first step.
Right, and so Murdoch's hard sealer can be used anywhere you would use. It's an interior product, so you don't want to use it outside, right?
Nope.
But you could use it on floors, trim, countertops, bath. It's great in bathrooms because of moisture.
Yep. It's sort of like we said, it's that high wear, but yet giving you that beauty of the tongue oil.
The beauty of the tongue oil, not plasticky like a polyurethane,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. Okay. So what are we doing?
And now the nice thing about the hard oil, or the hard sealer rather, is its odor. It actually has
How
a
does
bit
it
of
smell,
citrus
Rob?
in it. It smells nice. So I mean, and you're not used to that with an oil-based finish,
Right.
So
right.
you're usually you're used to something that's going to kind of knock you out. But this smell that's emanating from it is the citrus solvent that we use in it.
Where our original smells more like tongue oil, right?
Yeah, and it's not masking anything that's nasty in there. It's actually, if anything, it's just kind of masking the tongue oil smell, which is that nuttier smell.
Yep.
Very similar to some of our other finishes that contain the citrus.
And it's also VOC compliant with all the states that have VOC regulations.
Yep. It's lower than 275 that
Yep.
I think is required for clear wood floor finishes. So it's a great finish. What we're looking for in the hard sealer is we've got 4 different woods here. These are all hardwoods. We have cherry, we have maple, we have mahogany, and then we have purple heart. Each of these, you're going to get a little bit difference of density in them, where some of them are going to absorb more finish than others. And when we're doing our first coat, what we're looking for is to maximize the amount of finish we're allowing to go into the wood, right? So we're trying to make it so we're going to flood it so much that it drinks it all up. And then when it's done drinking, we're just going to make sure that there's no puddling left behind, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to use a brush with this.
And why not wipe on?
Well, I want more finish to go into the wood with the first coat, because when we're doing successive coats, we might want to use just a rag on something this small, because we only need to put a tiny, tiny film on the top. But without a previous film on here, we're just, things are just going to absorb down. And the way our tung oil finish is the way the finish behaves is that its penetration into the wood is sort of what creates all of its attachments to the wood. It cures inside the wood, and then when you build on top of it, you're connecting to those pieces below it. So you're ending up with a finish that isn't going to delaminate, right? It's not going to peel, it's not going to chip, it's going to bond to itself molecularly, so you're not going to necessarily have that trouble that people have with polyurethanes and other finishes. Sort of.
But it is okay to wipe on, right?
It's fine to wipe it on.
Okay,
But
just for
it's
those of you who want to wipe on.
Yeah, well, if you want to waste time, and yeah, you can wipe it on. No, but you can't wipe it on. It really doesn't matter how you get it on there. You can wipe it. You can use synthetic. You can use a sprayer. You can use a rag. You know, I mean, we have had areas, surfaces so big we would pour it. But then the key is just making sure you're not leaving behind any puddles.
And there is the drizzle method too.
Yeah, there's Mary had talked about it in the past, but there's nothing coming off of that. But and the reason why I like this brush is because I just dipped it in there, and there's tons of product in here, but it's not falling all over the place because of that. So
let's put some on.
All right, stop. So we can really see, it changing the wood. Now it's not changing the wood because of the color of the finish. It's changing the wood because
you're putting oil on it.
It's getting wet.
Yeah.
Right. So.
But it's not going to yellow.
It's not going to yellow. Polyurethanes of 20, 30 years ago would really turn yellow.
Oh,
come on. I mean, it's not like I'm done yet, but
it's bugging me.
So polyurethanes and varnishes of years ago, if they contained a lot of linseed oil, would really, really yellow. Our finish isn't going to do that over time. So, there are times that we want to recreate that in an old building, and we have to do that by adding color because our finish doesn't do that. So again, I dipped it in there, and this is the curly maple.
And so again, we're doing thin coats, right?
Yeah, well, this one doesn't matter as much. I really want to have it penetrate because I don't want to put, 2 more top coats on. I want to allow it to absorb as much as possible. So I'm just going to kind of put it on, and I'm going to walk away for a few minutes and then look at it and see how much is sort of penetrated in. And if I want to brush a little bit more on, I want to brush a little more on.
Can I show you where you missed a spot?
You can, but I just said I'm going to go back.
Just put it on.
But now I have too much on my brush. I can't go there yet. So this one, we're getting more dramatic with the color of the wood. You can kind of really see it. And when I'm putting it on there wet,
looks so beautiful.
Yeah, and it really pops it. But then as it dries, it just sort of goes bleh. It just dies again.
Blah.
Well, because it's absorbing in, so you're not having those leftover areas where there's oil sitting on top.
Right.
It's all gone in, so you end up, it ends up becoming spotty. Happy. So.
It's like the same spot on each wood. Have you all noticed that?
I'm doing this now on purpose, just to annoy you. So, and then this is the Purple Heart. Really, really beautiful wood. And this is, used a lot in instruments for the necks of guitars and so forth. It's a little bit, this one's going to absorb a lot faster, and it does have a little bit of oils in it. So it's going to be very jumpy in terms of how much is absorbing in and how much is sitting on top. So this one I might want to go back to a couple times over the next 15 minutes. Now, I could do this with the hard sealer because the hard sealer has tongue oil in it. So I'm going to have a little bit more open time to be able to work with it and go back to each of these pieces and kind of see, in the light, do I have even absorption? Am I leaving puddles behind? And this is not the same as the tongue oil products where we're going to wipe it afterwards. You don't necessarily need to wipe it. You just want to make sure that the coat is very, very thin.
Yep. Look at this one. It's absorbing like crazy on the mahogany in spots.
Yeah, and that's, it's not necessarily a seasonal growth difference, but there definitely is difference in how much it absorbs in. So,
and so when you're using the Murdoch system, you always want to start with 2 coats of hard sealer.
Yep.
If you were going to continue and use hard sealer just as your finish, how many coats would you recommend?
Still, I think over 4.
Over 4. More than 4 or 4 or more?
Is there a difference?
Sure.
4 or more. Yeah, 4 or more.
Okay. And how do you
don't
know?
Stop at 3 and call it 4.
Like I notice the more coats you put on, you get a better touch. There's a better feel.
Well, you end up really flattening the wood. So the more film coats you're putting on, the flatter the wood's going to be, right? Because now, it's almost like micro break, like
Yep.
just the wood isn't perfectly flat. Some of them you can get like perfectly flat, but other woods like even somewhat microscopically that there's going to be some differences in the way things absorb and so forth.
And so we would do 2 coats, and then you can move on to your top coat,
Yep.
or you can continue on with the hard sealer.
Yeah,
And the hard sealer is going to give it you like a satin sheen, right?
Yep, that's
Semi-gloss satin sheen.
that's correct. So, but like I said, the only thing I'm really concerned about at this point, I'm not worried about anything that's sort of any dust or anything that's happening on the finish right now. I just want to make sure that I've got an even coat. I don't have any puddling. I don't have any sort of edging or anything like that that has excessive finish on it.
And then after the coat, you're going to wait, after each coat, you're going to wait 24 hours to reapply, yes?
Depending on the wood, depending on the environment,
Yep.
Sometimes with your first coat you can get away with 5 or 6 hours between coats.
Okay.
But I definitely recommend when you scuff it,
Make sure you get
making
that
sure
white
you're
powder.
getting that white powder,
Yeah.
and then it's ready to go. If you want to check it before the white powder, you sort of put your finger on wherever there's finish and sort of push, and if it moves the finish, then it's obviously not ready yet. So, but other than that, you just wait for this to cure, scuff it, and then throw on
Your second coat.
Your second coat.
Okay, so hi. Now we're going to talk about hard oil as a top coat. You want to tell the people what we have on the boards already?
So people, we have we have cherry, we have hard maple, we have mahogany, and we have purple heart. Each of these have had 3 coats of finish put on them already.
Which finish?
If you let me get there. So I've got 2 coats of hard sealer, and then 1 coat of hard oil.
Okay.
That's on here. Not sure if this is going to be the final coat of finish. I could see, my mahogany. I could see a little, still a little bit of the grain, kind of missing some finish. The maple's looking really good.
Yeah, the maple feels like softer.
Yeah. I mean, there's some junk in the finish, so we'll have to make sure that the final coat is done in the right environment.
Which would be a dust-free environment.
Which is a dust-free environment.
And what if you do get what if you get dust in your like top coat?
Depending on how much dust you have in there, you might have to kind of resand it and kind of put a fresh coat on there. Sometimes you can get away with knocking off the stuff that's just a very thin film on there. I've seen people use a brown paper bag that you can kind of, after it's cured, after about a week, you crumble it and it knocks off that top stuff without killing the sheen.
Okay.
Other people have kind of created a slurry with the finish that kind of you end up sort of scuffing it and blending it and wiping it again. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways, but usually the best way is to get your money coat without dust.
Okay, let's do it.
Is the best way. So we're going to start with we've now have a sheen on everything, and like I said, we have a little bit of particulate that's in the finish. So we're going to use a 400 paper, or you can use a 4/0 steel wool, or you can use the synthetic pads, the red scrubby. But I like this because I can get it flat, right? And it'll help me make sure that all of my imperfections that are in the finish are going to be sanded out.
I'm seeing a lot of the white powder, so that means it's cured. Can you see that? That's what you're looking for.
But I do want to use light to my advantage. So
What do you mean light to your advantage?
well, you want to make sure that you can kind of see, fluorescent lights or strip lights sometimes are good because you can really start to move back and forth and kind of really look past all of the finish to kind of see how many imperfections are in it and if you got all those imperfections out. You could do a side light, even too, where you can kind of really see it and because the light is then bouncing up and down because of all the crud in your finish. But so
Crud.
well, yeah, there's all sorts of crud. I mean, and
Like
and
dust
especially
crud?
it could be, yeah, it's mostly like airborne dust, but it could be an errant bristle from the previous coat. It could be any number of things, but
Cat hair, dog hair.
exactly. So But each of these, I'm getting a real nice sand out of these guys because it's really well cured. I'm using my fingers to sort of create the flat. I'm not just doing one finger. I'm using, 3 or 4 fingers. I can use a block. I can use any number of things that are going to help me get it nice and flat. And I'm going to go with the grain. You actually just saw me kind of go like this. And go
I was
cross
wondering
grain.
about that.
No, I shouldn't have done it. That's why I wanted to make sure I'm going back and I'm, going to flatten it back out. But
Great demo.
so
So the hard oil, we haven't talked about this. The hard oil is one of our top coats in the Murdoch system. It is mostly resin with a little bit of tung oil, which is the inverse of our hard sealer. And you can put it on. It can be its own finish, right?
what's that? The hard oil?
The hard oil.
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's to me, it's sort of that hybrid that isn't quite a wiping varnish. It doesn't have more tung oil. It has a little more resin in it. Gives a nice protective finish. It flashes kind of, fairly quickly, so it's not meaning that it's drying pretty quick, and where I'm not going to get a lot of junk in it.
And the sheen on the hard oil.
Sheen on the hard oil is a little bit more than a satin. It's I certainly wouldn't call it a gloss, but it's definitely has
So
a
it's
sheen
like
to
a
it.
glossy satin.
Yeah.
And so can you use it without the hard sealer?
As a base coat?
Yeah. Or do you want the tung oil? You want all that oil that the hard sealer has in it to give you all the good stuff of the.
Yeah, I mean, in a pinch, I've taken the hard oil and I've added a little bit of mineral spirits to it just to thin it out a little bit to get good absorption. And you could certainly do that. And I just did a whole step without explaining it. This is
Rewind.
this is an odorless mineral spirits that I just dampened this with. It's not so wet that I'm squeezing anything out of it. It's just a dampened rag, and I just want to make sure that all my dust is picked up that I created. I might go a little crazier sometimes and vacuum everything up around it. But I just wanted to make sure that all the dust I created by scuffing it is gone.
And so the recommendation, let me go back to this. The recommendation is to put the hard sealer first because that gives you all the goodness of the tung oil into the wood, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think all of our finishes are flexible enough that there are times that, like I said, if you're in a pinch, there are ways, and you can certainly call us up and just ask us to say, hey, I don't have any hard sealer with me, but I have hard oil with me. What can I do?
Call us. Always call us.
And then we can help you identify the way to manipulate it in order to achieve its purpose. So that's something we really enjoy.
We also respond to emails, so you can email us as well.
So all of these guys have been not only tacked with my mineral spirits, they've been, I use a dry cloth too, just to make sure that there's no residual puddling or anything like that. You can use other solvents. You can use water. It doesn't have to be mineral spirits, but the water, you're gonna have to make sure it dries. You want to be careful and not use things like high solvent, like really aggressive solvents like acetone and denatured alcohol, because those can really kind of mess with the finish a little bit. But I have used denatured alcohol to sort of tack something. But it's the same thing with this. You don't want it so wet that you're defeating the purpose of just making a tack rag.
Okay.
Right. So hard oil, like our other finishes, you can apply it using a brush. You can apply it using a rag. You can apply it using a sprayer, synthetic pads. But like our finishes, all of our finishes, you want to make sure it goes on nice and thin. This is a blend of our resin as well as our tung oil. So you can go back to it after about 10 minutes or so and brush it or wipe it again. But you can also just apply it and leave it, right? So I'm going to use the brush. This is the brushes that we do sell. We like this brush because it has the fibers, the china bristles are very fine. And so when I brush it, I'm not seeing it like a finger's left behind. I'm going to dip it in. As I tell people, you only have as much finish as you want to spill. So I've got the finish in there. I'm just dipping it and getting it wet. It's not dripping off. And I'm just gonna sort of get the surface of the wood wet, right? I'm not looking, this is not a sealer coat. I'm not gonna get much absorption at all. I'm just gonna have it sitting on the top.
You're not going to get
Yep, so
You're not going to get much absorption because the pores of the wood are already filled with oil.
we're already filled with oil.
From our
so
first coats.
Same thing as I was doing before. I'm putting it on, and there might be some spots I missed. There might be some
Don't worry,
areas
I'll let
that-
you know if you miss something.
Apparently, yes, you do. So, but I'm just going to kind of get it on here. So this, I just noticed, there's a lot of finish on there, right?
Right now.
So that's almost too much finish because I'll never be able to spread that much finish around to where I'm not left, where I'm left with a thin film. So I can do one of two things. I can take some of it off the brush on here. I can dab it and do that, and then just go back and now sort of brush out what I had on there and fill the whole board. Now, if I still feel like it's too much, just do it again, right? Take some more off. And now I'm left with a nice thin film.
And we don't want too thick of coats because why?
Well,
Because it doesn't do you any favors by putting too much on. Why?
Because the tongue oil cures by having exposure to oxygen. So the more finish you leave on there, the harder it is for it to grab that oxygen and cure. And the same with the resin, that it's not necessarily the oxygen, but it's just the evaporation of it that's kind of helping it cure. So putting it on too thick sort of prevents it from curing. It's like the top will cure, but underneath won't cure.
And then you have trouble with
So
the
then you
finish.
end up with a little bit of a rubbery mess.
Yeah. We don't want that for you.
No. So, but something this small, I barely want anything on the brush because, I'm seeing it kind of go on, and it's a nice amount. This is still a little bit too much on there. So it might mean that not only am I brushing this on, but I'm not going to dip it again, right? This is a more than enough product.
And
to finish
you
this
would
one.
also, you can also do this by wiping on, and you missed some spots.
Yep. So if I wanted to do a wiping, now it doesn't matter if I used a brush to put it on there.
You don't care that you missed some spots.
Well, I'm about to show you something.
I'm
to get rid of the
impatient.
missed spot. So because I'm still, I still have uneven finish on top of all of this. I can take a rag, which I was using just to sort of dip my brush in, but this is a dry part of it. And I can just sort of give myself a nice, even, thin coat on top by using the brush method or the wipe method. And I could do the same with this one if I wanted to, with all of them. Because now I'm trying to, I put the product on there, now I'm just trying to give it that real money coat where I'm just leaving a thin amount of product on there, and I'm using sort of the rag to do it. Now I can also use a dry brush instead of using with any product on there. I'm actually making sure it's nice and dry. Yeah, there's not much on there now. And now I can go onto this and I can brush this out.
And that also can help with this can all help with if there are bubbles forming on
Yep.
the finish.
Bubbles, and sometimes it even helps move some of the dust and things that's on there. And so it really doesn't matter what I use because now that I kind of put this on there, now I want it to flatten. So you don't want to brush it or wipe it too late because you didn't give it enough time for the finish to sort of even with this, you're still leaving brush marks. You want it to kind of flatten out. And you're just leaving enough finish, and it seems like it's happening more with the Purple Heart than anything else, that everything is sort of flattening out real nice because this is the first one I did. It's probably going to start happening to the maple.
And
as
so
well.
now we would leave it alone
Yep.
for how long? 8 to 24 hours?
8 to 24 hours. I mean, I
Depending
wouldn't well, in this stage, I would want to at least wait. Well, the 12 hours might be a little too soon. So if I were finishing at like at 2 or 3 o'clock at night, in the afternoon rather, it'll probably be ready by the next morning for me to put a fresh coat on.
If it needs it. And
So
how would you determine that before we let the people go?
Well, I would determine that by knowing how consistent the sheen is on the surface.
Okay.
If I have an inconsistent sheen on the finish, I haven't put enough coats on.
Okay.
So it almost looks, I can almost tell right now that the mahogany is going to need another, because I can even see some of the grain in there is sort of picking up a little bit, is absorbing a little bit more.
Okay.
So yeah, so now it's all about the money coats. You want to make sure you're in a dust-free environment. You want to make sure you're between 55 degrees and 85 degrees, over or under 65% relative humidity. And all those things are really important. If you wanted this to cure faster, what I would do is leave it for about an hour, and I would come back in here and I would turn on a fan. And then that fan is going to help push oxygen on top of it, which is going to help it cure.
Okay.
So yeah, so best of luck. Enjoy your project.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.